Cool.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Megan, could you please call the roll?
Regent Adams,
Present.
Regent Adongo,
Present.
Regent Bogus,
Present.
Regent Cologne, Regent Boydum.
Present.
Thank you. Regent Cruiser.
Present.
Regent Manydeeds,
Here.
Regent Nixon,
Present.
Regent Peterson,
Here.
Regent Prince,
Present.
Regent Rye,
Here.
Regent Salzwedel,
Here.
Regent Trainer,
Present.
Regent Tyler,
Here.
Regent Underly,
Here.
Regent Walsh,
Here.
and Regent Weatherly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Megan. Before we begin, are there any board members who wish to declare a conflict of interest with the items on today's agenda? No? Okay, hearing none, let's proceed. The records of the December 5th, 6th, 2024 meeting of the UW System Board of Regents have been provided. Are there any corrections? Okay. Hearing none, the minutes are approved as distributed. We'll begin today with the consent agenda containing the following capital planning budget requests. UW System Authority to construct 2023-25 classroom renovation instructional technology improvement program. UW System Authority to construct all agency maintenance and repair projects. And UW System Authority to construct minor facilities renewal projects. Do any of the board members wish to remove any items from the consent agenda for further discussion or consideration? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt resolution 4A, 4B, and 4C as included in the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you get that? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, the motion carries. For our next two items, I'll call on Senior Associate Vice President Alex Grell.
Thank you, President Regent Bogus. So first, item number 5, on behalf of UW-Madison, requesting authority to execute 2 leases and possibly purchase 2 parcels of land to relocate the fleet services and waste and recycling operations. So as part of their long-range master plan, they intend to develop the site where fleet services are located on Mills Street. This is a prime location for central campus activities like academic or student-supported buildings and parking ramps. In order to make way for future development, we need to move the garage and fleet operations and storage to another location. In addition, the waste and recycling operation in Fitchburg needs a new location. So as part of an RFI process, these parcels were identified as available. We looked for parcels to meet the needs of these 2 programs and identified these 2 parcels as to meet the needs, best meet the needs of these programs. These parcels were identified for parking and transportation offices, garage, storage vehicle, a new park and ride lot, and a new home for waste and recycling. As you can see, the parcels are near each other, allowing for consolidation of administrative functions. We did give you a map. One site is improved with a building complex and the other is undeveloped. They will both be transformed to meet the needs of these programs. The leases are going to be structured to allow for the purchase of these sites before the end of year 3. We would need SBC approval to acquire these 2 parcels. However, we don't need their approval to lease. These are 2 different landlords and the lease terms are slightly different depending upon the site. The site with the building will be a 15-year lease with 2 5-year renewals, and the other is a 10-year lease with 2 5-year renewals. These 2 landlords will make the necessary tenant improvements on our behalf. So I also want to note that we have done this before when we did the admissions lease on behalf of that project years ago for Madison. We entered into a long-range lease and there was a codicil in there that allowed for acquisition of that site. So that is the admissions recruitment center over there off of University Drive. So we have done this before. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Alex. Before we discuss, is there a motion to adopt resolution 5?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Regents, do you have any questions for Alex?
I do.
Yes, Regent Rye?
Thank you. Alex, I remember when we've done this in the past, and I have no questions on the logic behind the project, moving them off campus, et cetera. It's more the lease to own concept here and understanding what the value of the land is today versus the purchase price and what we'll be paying over the next 1 to 3 years, depending on when we purchase, and how that was determined. I kind of understand the why behind the lease to own and the process, but just want to make sure that, we're not, that we're using our funds wisely.
That's a really great question, and I'm going to turn it over to Paula Veltum, who is the head of real estate at UW-Madison, to answer the financial assessment of this acquisition.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. So we did actually, these were for sale properties, and the purchase prices were very much in line with what those were for sale for. The unimproved vacant lot, there was actually only a portion of that lot that was for sale. They were going to develop that as a cold storage facility. So when we approached them and getting more of the land to meet the needs of the two programs. They were willing to do that. We did do appraisals, and the purchase price is under the appraised value.
And Regent Rye, we would have to do that for the SBC anyway. So before we would take it to the SBC, we would have to refresh those appraisals because they can't be probably older than 6 months old. So I think at that time, when these become available, the university will have to make a decision about whether it's financially in their best interest to acquire these parcels based on their value at that time, right?
Understand that it's just the lease cost over the next 3 years. It's just causing me a little bit of pause versus the purchase now, but I understand the process and what it would take to go through that. Because unless something really bad happens in Madison, I don't see the value going down over that time, and versus the price we could pay today. So I just want to make that point known, but I guess I'm kind of also understanding the why that you have to go through this.
Yeah,
So,
I think we would
Oh.
probably not approach the SBC to do any acquisitions before summer on a good day, right, Paula? Yeah, I mean, I think we're thinking that the landlord's going to take about 3 to 6 months to do the renovations on our behalf. And I think at that time, the university can make a decision about whether they would like to keep paying lease costs or if it makes sense to pull the trigger on an acquisition.
Correct.
I think Jack had something to say.
Ashok, I just wanted to say that I know this parcel pretty well, and it's in an area that is prime for future development for the city of Madison. It kind of works up towards the old Oscar Mayer site, which is planned for complete redevelopment, and then the corridor kind of between the new city market and the old Oscar site where these parcels are located will be, I think, will be pretty valuable over the next 5 years or so. So I'm not sure if that went into your appraisal, but I do think that there's an upside to this that I didn't see in the paperwork here.
So
That is
noted,
correct.
sir.
And I would just add that we did lock in the 3-year rate, so that purchase price is locked in for the 3 years.
And I think that's the most important thing, is just understanding where the value is going to be. And thanks.
But so noted, sir, we would not want to spend exorbitant amount of money leasing for a long term if our intent is to acquire as soon as possible. Yes, sir.
You know where I was coming from, Alex. Thank you. I appreciate
Yes,
that.
I understand that's your perspective. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other further discussion, questions? I don't think I see any hands up. So if there are no further questions, I will call for a vote on the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And the next item up is the authority to demolish 4 buildings at UW-Eau Claire and the old chemistry building at UW-Milwaukee, and authority to redevelop a new campus quad at UW-Milwaukee. And again, I will call on Alex Rowe. Thank you.
So this is a very exciting project. I'm hoping you're going to see a few more of these. So as background, we requested enumeration to demolish the 4 buildings at Eau Claire as part of the 23-25 capital budget. And instead, we received a multi-building enumeration of $45,400,000 to cover multiple buildings across our institutions. Since its enactment, the program has become quite popular with our universities seeking to remove obsolete facilities from their inventories and operating budgets. And we actually had a 6-year plan, and now I have universities that are trying to squish that into a 2-year plan. It is my hope that you get an opportunity to approve projects still at Platteville, Parkside, Whitewater, Oshkosh, and Madison before we run out of these dollars. The 4 buildings at Eau Claire were constructed in 1951 and are obsolete, outdated, and have been replaced with the Sonatag and Pablo buildings. The plan is to remove the buildings and reconstruct the landscape into a green space with pedestrian walkways and new site lighting. At UWM, the university opened a new chemistry building in the fall of 2024 and is currently in the process of moving all relevant material and equipment out of the old building to make way for its demolition. A new quadrangle will be constructed to provide green space, which is limited on this urban campus, along with associated pedestrian pathways and lighting in the area occupied by the existing building. Removal of all 5 buildings will aid in the reduction of operating expenses. Vacant buildings still require oversight and minimal utility service in case of fire or other damage that might occur due to adverse weather. That completes my report.
Thank you very much, Alex. Before we discuss Regents, can I have a motion and a second?
So moved. This is Joan.
Second,
Thank you, Joan.
Robin.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, I don't think I see any questions. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Next up, item 7, approval of revisions to Regent Policy Document 2027, selection process for system president, chancellors, vice chancellors, and UW system senior leadership positions. In our last open session item is a proposed revision to Regent Policy 2027 related to the selection process for UW system senior leadership positions. Dan Shanin, Associate Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer, will present on this item. Dan?
Thank you, Regent President Bogus. This afternoon is presenting a revision to RPD 20-27. This policy prescribes the process for filling vacancies for numerous positions, but what is under consideration here is a change to how we prescribe the posting requirements for senior leadership roles at systems. So that would be senior vice presidents, general counsel, and the chief auditor. The positions are all limited appointments within the meaning of Wisconsin statutes, section 36.17, and they serve at the pleasure of the president, the system president. Each of these positions are core members of the leadership team at the University of Wisconsin System Administration. And the policy revisions would provide additional flexibility to determine the appropriate process for filling vacancies at the time that a vacancy occurs, providing greater flexibility to the president to appoint his or her team that is going to be fulfilling the obligations under their direction. So the policy does require a level of consultation with the Regent president to help determine that process. But that's really the significant change here. Rather than having a prescribed process in the policy, I'm really granting that flexibility so we can make a determination at the time. It relieves a lot of administrative burden and make sure that we're not doing processes that may be unnecessary given the circumstances at the time of a vacancy. Happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dan. Before we discuss, is there a motion to adopt Resolution 7?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Someone said second? Did you get that? Okay. Questions? Regent Many Deeds, and then got a bunch of hands up, and then Regent Walsh and Regent Goydam.
Okay, thank you. Dan, are we in trouble with any legal requirements regarding this change? In other words, is this something that we're required to post and do searches for under the law?
They are not. We've had this reviewed by the Office of General Counsel and they had no concerns.
Let me ask you this one follow-up then. The chancellors don't have this ability, do they?
So, right under our policy, the board policy kind of delegates them the ability to determine the procedure. I think most campuses have gone through a governance process with their local governance to determine what that would be.
Okay, so we don't know, as we
Well-
sit here today, which campuses have the authority to just hire people as determined under this proposed amendment to the policy. If I understand your answer.
Right, I would think that most of them do have prescribed procedures. I would say we're not recommending a change with respect to the campus level.
I know we're getting off point here, but I just want to make sure if the chancellors already can do this, that's something I'd like to know.
And I would say most of them have probably entered into some form of prescribed process with their governance.
All right, thanks.
Let's see, Regent Walsh.
Right. Dan, I want to say I fully support the great majority of this. I think it's very important for the system president to be able to appoint his or her senior leadership team. I guess the one question I have is, unless I'm mistaken, which I could be, the general counsel reports to both the Board of Regents and the system president. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I'm not comfortable with lumping a position like that in with these other ones. I think that should be treated separately. And whoever the board leadership is can decide with the system president how they're going to go about it. But the decision to hire belongs to both the board and the system president.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the policy language in particular, right? I mean, there is an obligation to consult with the regent president to determine that process.
I think,
but
now
yeah.
I'm not a personnel
But-
expert, but
yeah.
I would say those two things don't mean the
Are
same
don't-
thing.
Correct.
Consulting and decision-making are not the same.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Regent Goitham.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So maybe just out of curiosity, was there because the change kind of leaves open quite a bit to, and I understand the need for flexibility and efficiency and all those things and picking a team, but not having anything sort of enumerated as, you know, the search may include or could include, and there's discretion, but there's at least some articulation of a potential process or steps. Was that considered at all to sort of give visibility into the fact that there will in fact be a process versus what's written there? Just if I read just those words, it seems as though there could be, you know, a very limited or potentially not much of a process at all, depending on what the regent president and the system president choose to do. So was there a consideration given to bulleting out anything but with discretion, and would like to understand why that may not have been optimal here?
Absolutely. I think, you know, we could put mays into a policy and put in kind of some discretionary procedures. I think once you've done that and put the word may in, that language just becomes, additional language, right? Right, because with the word may, it wouldn't actually prescribe anything. So I think that the decision here to go with that minimal language to actually kind of mirror the policy language with the chancellor search, which is to say, right, design an appropriate process at the time. It's you know, in my mind, in my judgment, right, either the policy prescribes a process. If it suggests a process, it's effectually the same language as we have here, right, which is that it's in the discretion of the president or the regent president to right, change the process.
Yeah,
So,
I don't disagree with that, Dan, but it does give a sense of a little bit more that there will be a robust, that like these are things. So it just for consideration. Otherwise, it does feel like it could be really at the discretion of the system president and regent president with no real understanding of what that process could entail. So just for consideration. Otherwise, it feels quite light, at least as I read it.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think it could be a process in which there's an agreement to an appointment, right? So there is a range of process that could be done from a very full search to a consideration of a current incumbent and an appointment. So, yeah. Regent Rye.
Regent many deeds, I think.
Oh, many deeds. Okay.
Regent.
Many deeds.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm really worried about the lack of transparency. We are not a private enterprise. We have the obligation to the people that we're serving, the state of Wisconsin, et cetera, to be open in our processes. That being said, I'm really supportive of Karen's suggestion, which I think we should follow, which would be to remove the office of general counsel from this policy and make it clear that since that position serves both the Board of Regents and the system president, that be a separate way of hiring.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. I believe Regent Rye was next.
That beat me to it. I was going to recommend that we have a friendly amendment to the policy to exclude the general counsel from knowledge.
Regent Nixon.
Dan, I just wanted to bring up too that Lori Storts is also a dual report. So if we want to talk about general counsel, then we might want to look at that as well.
And if I could just interject, Dan, Lori Storts is covered by the policy and the audit. The delegation to the general counsel was something that my predecessor made. Before that, the general counsel reported directly to the president. It would be my intent, if this policy were to be passed in its current form, that would be the structure that would be extant going forward. That is customary to what I have seen in my experience, that the general counsel does report to the chief executive officer. Certainly is there available to provide guidance to the board. I'm not suggesting that but to have a dual report is unusual in my experience. And if this policy were to be adopted, it would be my intent to change that delegation that was made. The president, I guess it would have been President Thompson who put that in place. But before that time, there was never that dual reporting.
Regent Nixon.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm reading the write-up that we got and the requested action. At the end of the background paragraph, it said the ability to have the flexibility is essential to the efficient and effective. Why is it essential? Essential means it's a must. You gotta have it. Why is this essential to have this?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at the term of a president and the length of a search, I think that our current policy creates gaps. And what we've ended up doing is bringing in a president and forming a team through interim appointments. I think that the ability to have more flexible search procedures would allow a president to transparently, ironically here, transparently appoint a team that is accountable to the president, and the president is held accountable to the board for those decisions. So to me, that essential part really goes to how much time as administrative office we want to spend going through process versus being able to empower a president to create the team to carry out the functions, the executive functions here at system administration. So, that to me is an essential timing aspect.
Yeah, one of the things, and I think it was Regent Many Deeds that talked about it, is, we are the University of Wisconsin system and everybody watches what we do. And rightfully so. what this does allow them to do is just the two of them go off and do something. Now, with my current president and my current president, I'm kind of okay with that, but I don't know who the president's going to be in the future of the board, and I don't know who the president's going to be of the system. And I have concerns about delegating it out because I don't know who's coming next. And there's nothing in here that requires them to tell the board, this is what we did, or this is the process we chose, or anything like that. I find that troubling given that who we are. And I think that does become a transparency issue. And we all know, even though I believe we're really, really transparent, I want to say that out loud. I think we're over transparent most of the time. But perception becomes reality, and so I'm concerned. Like I said, right now, today, yeah, but I don't know who's coming after, and that I find disconcerting.
I appreciate that point. I would say under this model, it certainly is resting that accountability for decisions on the president and the board's ability to hold the president accountable. But I do appreciate that point. Regent Walsh.
Right. Thank you, Dan. Two things. I see Jess is in the room. Jess, was the change in the report of the general counsel done by President Thompson, or was it done by President Cross? Because it seems to me when I came in 2019, it was already a dual report. Now, Quinn's memory on that will be better than mine, but.
My recollection is that there was a memo by President Thompson which articulated the dual reporting. Whether there was something more formal than that before that, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, I think it's odd that he would give up half the report of the general counsel. It doesn't seem, I mean, I believe you absolutely that there was a memo to that effect, but I'm having trouble piecing together the sequence of events. I have to say that I wholeheartedly agree with Ed and Ashok that I think we need a friendly amendment, and just because of this issue of the general counsel report, I will vote no without that particular change.
Regent Nixon, I think your hand is up.
Well, I think Regent Adams' hands went up first, but
Oh, I'm sorry, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you, Regent Nixon. One of the things that I think may help us in adding a friendly amendment to this discussion, and I think is necessary, is that the utilization of the executive committee, I think needs to be lifted here for a number of reasons. And I think this is one where if we're seeking efficiency, and I can understand that, but also transparency and the dual reporting, perhaps the general counsel in that decision would be similar to how we've outlined this for the chief audit executive, that goes to the Regent Audit Committee, and that's a joint decision with the system president, that perhaps with the general counsel, that decision can be made jointly with the executive committee. So I just want to offer that for consideration.
Thank you. And I would, if we were to add that language, I'd note that is the chair of the audit committee, and perhaps the appropriate officer might be the region president versus the whole committee, just so there's a clear authority as a suggested amendment.
Yes, but I would imagine that is true, Dan. In that process, it is the chair of the audit committee, but I would imagine that the chair of the audit committee may consult with, the committee.
Okay.
Regent Nixon, I think.
yes,
And then
thank you.
Regent I.
Is Quinn Williams in the room? I can't tell from the size of the
Yes,
street.
he's here. He's here.
I'm going to, if I may address a question to Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, as a lawyer, how do you feel about that dual reporting thing? That would make me squeamish as a lawyer to have two different bosses here because you know how this works in the real world. Sometimes it implicates one of your bosses. How does that work for you?
Thank you, Regent Nixon. In practicality, my comfort in working with the chief executive, so the president of the system, is the day-to-day work, rely on the president for communications with board leadership and with the rest of you. So in terms of the proposal, it's easiest to work with the chief executive, and to the extent that as part of the functional reporting, frankly, my preference is to the president. And that makes it easier for me in terms of my reporting structure. As it goes, as long as there's never a sheet of paper between the president of the board and the president of the system, my job is really easy, and it's been very easy.
Thank you. I'm going to vote against this. There's just too many little things I think that need to be adjusted, and I think it would bear a little more thought and a little more, the point is well taken. Efficiency is wonderful. On the other hand, if you all just appointed me to make all the decisions by myself, that would be really efficient, but probably not in the best interest of the system. Okay, so I just think we need some tweaking and some adjustments and some further thoughts here. That's anyway.
Regent Ryan and Regent Seswell.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with other comments, especially the dual reporting of a general counsel. Inherently, there could be a situation where we have conflict, and I'm not exactly sure how you would manage a conflict, except all of a sudden the GC is representing nobody in that situation, and then you got to pick a side. Given how lawyers think and operate, which I will be the first person to say I don't really understand that, but I could not see the conflict definition. To the other point around transparency and process, and I completely understand the need to be efficient and as a CEO, understand the need to pick your own team and the need for the system president to do that. But I do believe that we could probably find a little bit better of a middle ground today than completely, redlining the policy and not articulating that. I do not feel like we need to go through, huge search and screen processes when the real authority sits with the system president. I mean, we do that with chancellors because of the delegated authority that the chancellors have, and that is our responsibility as regents to make sure we make that decision and to involve shared governance and a variety of other factors. But when it comes to, picking a system VP of finance, the ultimate accountability is the system president. That being said, because of the working nature of the vice presidents with the board, maybe there could be a streamlined process that involves the executive committee as part of the interview process. But however that is, I think it would be good to outline some sort of process and give us that to opine on, rather than, I think, 90% of it's redlined and we're down to 2 sentences. There could be a better middle ground. So I just, my 2 cents, that I feel like we could find a better way to articulate how to move forward, while still want to reemphasize that this is system president's decision. That's the person that reports to, that's where the authority sits. But given the unique nature of the system and the unique nature of the desire for transparency and this board's relationship with the system president, which is a positive one, maybe there's a good middle ground here that we could find that's still efficient, it doesn't waste money, but still is transparent.
Could I just respond to that real quickly, Regent Rye? I mean, I think the issue is in the context, if you have an interim in the role, which we have several of right now, if you want to have a broader search process, then we have to conduct a search. If we are comfortable with the people we have in place, then it is a different story. And at the end of the day, listen, I am accountable to this board, but I have to have the flexibility of having the team that I want behind me in order to be able to execute on the plan. And if the board finds that I am not doing that job, I am accountable for it. But if it is with a team that is not of my selection at the end of the day, it's a lot more difficult to hold me accountable in that context. And I would not think that that's what this board would want at the end of the day. So I do feel strongly about this, but I also appreciate the board's perspective on it. It is ultimately your decision to make, and I respect that. But that is my perspective on this. And I just wanted you to be aware of where I'm coming from.
I appreciate that, Jay. I completely understand where you're coming from and agree. We hold you accountable. It's the only one that we evaluate. We don't evaluate the rest. We hold you accountable. The signature authority is with you. It's just maybe outlining a little bit more of a process, how we can help if there's not a defined candidate, for example, such as an interim that you want to appoint to that. There could be I'm not sure if there's a middle ground or even like a 25% ground to get to here, just to have the process a little bit more outlined. But I completely agree with you that, we hold you accountable.
Can I just interject? I see lots of hands up, but I just want to interject because I think what I'm hearing, I just want to make sure what I'm hearing is correct, because it sounds like transparency is the issue. I'm just wondering if, I think we agree that the burden of the system president to have a full search committee for these positions, I don't know. I don't think that's where we're headed. If we were to have more transparency by having, for example, in case of the general counsel, the appointment is made jointly by the system president and the board president, perhaps the executive committee. I don't know if that would solve the issue of transparency, but I just want to throw that out there. Because ultimately it is the system president that is responsible. If there's another system president that goes haywire, obviously the board has the authority to, choose to get rid of that system president and do it that way. But I just wanted to put that out there, and I see lots of hands up, but just for efficiency. So Regent Salzwedel, and then I'm not sure. Sorry, I don't know if Regent Goydam was next, but I see Regent Prince, Regent Goydam, and Regent Salzwedel. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Me or?
Yeah, Regent.
Okay, sorry. I understand the concerns about transparency here. I do think in my experience, there's more issues with folks on the backside of hiring saying I was forced to consider candidates, choose candidates, as opposed to being accountable. And I like the idea of having more accountability and being and having that be the person who is reporting to us, that being Jay. So I understand the issues. Maybe there's middle ground. Maybe you use the executive committee, as Angela was suggesting, but I do support this. I think we're hiring Jay to do a job, and we're holding him accountable for it, and we're asking him to hire the people that he needs to hire in order to. And I don't think that this policy change totally absolves the board from responsibilities around that. So I would support this.
Thank you. Regent Goydam, were you next, I think?
Maybe I'll just go. Thanks. So a couple things. One, I don't think I personally am not, and I haven't heard that there's a desire to have a search and screen committee for every role. Not at all. I think my concern kind of trails back to what Regent Nixon said, which is, policies aren't drafted or prepared with specific leaders in mind. They're meant to be agnostic for whoever comes in the door, right? So to the point made earlier that, we have all the faith in the world in President Rothman and President Bogost. These policies will be written and last well beyond, likely the tenure of many of us. And so I think my concern is that without any detail, again, I will submit the idea of having guidance or some information there that gives a sense of what the possibilities could be. If it's interim, perhaps the person stays in the role. If there's, it could be a range of things, but at least there is some guidance, or even if it's permissive, that's in there. Because right now it just reads, it seems just like there could be no process whatsoever, even to evaluate those. And again, I think the discretion of the president is paramount in all of this, but we aren't a private company. We do operate differently, and I think it would be helpful to have more detail in here. So I'm not for this in its current incarnation. And then the other comment I have is that I do have concerns with the general counsel having two reporting lines. I think the general counsel, at least in my experience, also would report to the CEO. However, there is an obligation for the general counsel to, ethical obligation to really represent the entity writ large. So I think I'm very comfortable with that reporting obligation, reporting line to go to Jay. And so I'm not so concerned about how do we evaluate the GC role. That's my take. Thank you.
I think Regent Rye maybe next.
Actually, I think I was next.
Okay, sorry, Regent Prince.
That's
Go
okay,
ahead.
dear. I lowered my hand by accident and I apologize. I'll be quick. I'm hearing this. I actually had paused when I actually read through this the first time, just because I wasn't quite sure exactly what you were asking. So to Jay, my question is, comment is, I am always in support of the CEO picking their leadership team. You have to work with them. You have the day-to-day association with them. My question is why this policy is coming before us now. What is the underlying issue that this came before us at this particular meeting? Is it because of the number of interims that you currently have in senior leadership? What prompted this?
Regent Prince, it's something I have been thinking about for a while, but it certainly there's no illusion about the number of interims that we have currently in place. And I just don't think that's a healthy way. I am very comfortable with my team, and quite frankly, one of those interim appointments will expire in a couple of months, and I want to be able to deal with that. Going through a search in that process makes no sense to me at all. I have not spoken with Regent President Bogost about that topic yet, because I wanted to see where the board came out, but that is what is driving this. But at the end of it, though, it is just, it's my experience in the corporate world, at least the environment that I operated in, is that the CEO had that authority. The CEO is wise for he or she to consult with appropriate board members before you make major appointments, which I would intend to do. But it is not something that you would normally go through a lengthy search process if in fact you have developed it, even if you have the talent on hand, or you are developing the talent, then to go through a search process, I think is particularly inefficient.
No, totally understand. I've been inside of all of these interims when I was actively working, so I get that. I'll just say this, and please everyone remember I'm not an attorney, but from the real world, it is very difficult to have 5 interims in your senior leadership team. It's just not a healthy way to be. That doesn't mean I'm still waffling as to whether I can support this in the current form. I'd like to see a little bit of a modification, but I don't know if it's possible for the board in a way to waive what the current status might be for interims that you want, and then for us to thoughtfully think through this, simply because this is an era of efficiency, transparency, and I'm just not there yet to just say yes to this in the current form. But I also want to be very careful about us moving from our role as board to operations. That is not who we are, not what we do. And frankly, I think our search processes are way overboard. They're inefficient. So that's my comment for now, and I'll wait to hear others and then the vote.
Regent Many Deeds.
Hopefully for the last time, and I apologize for talking so much. I agree with Regent Goydam regarding some sort of modification to this policy. you know, it says what it says, but I've been around long enough to see other past presidents. I trust Jay completely before I say this. I've seen past presidents disregard or interpret policies to their liking for their benefit in this system. And that has happened. That's all I'm going to say about that. Second paragraph, second, I guess, issue is regarding the general counsel. I report to two people on the same case all the time, two entities. The company, the insurance company, and the insured. They're both my clients, and I report to both of them, and I haven't had a problem with that in my 46 years of practicing. I know it can be done, and I know that our general counsel presently in place can do that with no problem. I certainly understand why it would be easier to only report to one person. I wish I had that sometimes in some of the cases that I have, but I think it's doable, and I think it has to be done in this case when you're representing both the board and the president. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I think we should remove that position from the policy and maybe think a little bit more about this policy as presented.
Thank you, Regent Menezes. Regent Walsh?
Madam President, I request a roll call vote on this policy.
Okay. I'm not sure we're done with the discussion, but go
When
ahead,
it's
Regent
time.
Prince, and
If I could
yes,
get one more thing in, would that be
Go
okay,
ahead.
Regent
Yes.
President? Question, and this would probably be Dan. Past practice has shown that if we have interims in these positions, that you could put in for a waiver for them. It's been done before. So my question to you is, would it be helpful if we could do that, if that was presented to us to support a waiver for certain of the interims that Jay is interested in, and then we move forward with more thoughtful consideration around changing this policy?
I think that's a good question. I think our current policy is a waiver to allow the interim to apply. And maybe what is needed is a policy that indicates that the president can apply for a waiver to have them appointed, right? Because I do think of the past policy as a waiver to allow them to apply for the position.
All I would say is if someone could look at this, I lived through this. One day I would go to work, someone would be an interim, the next day I would come in and they would be permanent. So it can be done. So I think for an immediate resolution, that might be helpful to Jay while we think through what this policy should be.
So I would say that the waiver process for non-senior leadership positions does exist. So at other levels of the organization and at other even I think at a vice chancellor level, there's a waiver, to apply to waive recruitment. However, it's not within our current policy to do that for vice presidents. So this is my understanding. So I think Regent Ryan and Regent Peterson.
I guess just something for us to think about in your vote is, what makes the senior vice president of finance different than the associate person for finance? What makes this role so special from the board's perspective? Because if it's not so special, in other words, they don't have signature authority that would put the board in conflict, if there isn't a situation where they're going to be able to do something independent of their boss, being the assistant president, then I guess my question in this whole conversation is, why does it matter? Why does the process matter? Why does even, and I know I might get in trouble for saying, well, why does transparency matter at this level and not at every level? As long as we have HR policies involved in hiring and firing, because, from what I understand, we have a policy on hiring here, but Jay, to my knowledge, you don't have to come to us in a policy if you fire a vice president, only if you hire. So
that is correct.
Shouldn't that be balanced if your policy is to be that way? So we're spending a lot of time talking about roles that I'm not sure I understand personally why that role is any different, or the authority to hire is different than the authority to fire. So as the conversation has gone on, I've definitely evolved my thoughts. So thank you, fellow regents, for, you know, the conversation, because I've definitely evolved my thought on this. And I do feel that removing that sections from the policy as it stands today makes more sense to me than anything right now, and understanding both the hiring and firing ability. And once again, why are those positions so special? They are not the ones that have the ultimate decision-making authority that we as a board have given the system president. Thank you.
Regent Peterson?
Just briefly, I'm concerned. I think most of us don't understand all of this, that if you haven't been a committee chair, or if you haven't worked with the executive committee at the Regent board level, that there's confusion about what this all involves and why it's important. I feel if we have a roll call vote and I vote no on this, that it is like not supporting President Rothman, and I would never want to do that. And so I'm concerned about the fact that there's a lot of questions, and maybe if we had started out with what Joan said first, is why are we doing this? If somebody had just explained right at the beginning, why is this come up today? Because I was really surprised when I read through this, and so I guess I'd like to make sure that everyone understands this, and that and I guess that's a concern, you know, that we are all want to support our CEO and want to support and definitely want to make things more smooth and efficient. That, I mean, there is nothing that that spells inefficiency like the university system. There is just so much stuff going on. I don't know. I've been here for almost 7 years and I still don't know what's going on. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Regent Peterson. I'm going to suggest, I think we've had a really great discussion, and I'm so appreciative of all of you weighing in on this. And I think where we're at, and I know that Regent Walsh called for a roll call vote, but I think, you know, I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement that we really want to support President Rothman, and we do want to be more efficient. But I think there's some details that perhaps you're uneasy about, and for transparency and other reasons, I'm going to move to table this right now, and perhaps we can wordsmith it and address all your concerns and come back at a later time and bring this up and make sure we all understand the purpose and the language within to make it more efficient with transparency. So, and I see your hand up, Regent Prince. Before I make the motion, go ahead.
I would support you tabling it. My only comment would be if there is an immediate need for our system president around potential interims expiring, because we can take our time, but maybe they're expiring in the next month or two, that I would ask our whoever it is, legal counsel, whomever, to take a look and see if there's something that the board can do for right now to assist the CEO in waiving whatever, if there are interim positions that he wants to become permanent, and then move forward after that. So support tabling. I will put the motion on the floor if that's helpful for you.
Yes, thank you.
But I also want us to think about that.
I'll second.
Procedural question, do we have to handle the motion
That's where
on
I
the
was-
table?
That's where I was
first?
going.
I don't think so.
I think we
Is
have
that
to
correct?
address under the first underlying motion,
table.
why my hand was raised. Was there a first motion on the floor to vote?
A motion to table has been made, a second has been recorded, so now we move to a vote. So there's no discussion.
Sorry,
Okay.
can we back? Maybe my question was there previously a motion on the floor to vote, and then there was discussion based on the motion on the floor to vote on the red lines?
There was a motion on the floor to vote and a second, and now there's been a motion to table. So now we take the motion to table.
I didn't, so that's my point of order is if there's already a motion on the floor, are we able to then consider the tabling motion, or do we have to actually address the first underlying motion?
No, the motion to table supersedes the motion to vote.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Regent Walsh, did you?
Yeah, one other question for Jay. Jay is, are we back against the wall with some of these interims in terms of time? And if we had to deal with a couple separately, separate from this proposal, could that be done quickly enough for you to be comfortable to take care of the interim positions you have now?
I believe the one that is most time sensitive, we have a couple of months to deal with it, so we can address it. And I will work with General Counsel Williams to see what is necessary, and I appreciate the accommodation of the board and the consideration on that front. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I think we can handle that quickly. And if it's not quickly enough, please let us know and we'll expedite it because obviously that's a need here.
Thank you, Regent Walsh. Okay. So I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion to table, please say
Aye.
yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. We will table the motion. Thank you very much. Thank you for the great discussion. I appreciate it. Moving into closed session, I'll now seek a motion and a second for the Board of Regents to move into closed session to consider a student request for review of a UW-Madison decision as permitted by statute 19.85, section 1, section A, section F and G, Wisconsin statutes, and B, consider performance evaluations of chancellors as permitted by statutes 19.85, section 1, section C of Wisconsin statutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Megan, could you please conduct a roll call vote on the motion to move into closed session?
Regent Adams,
Yes.
Regent Adongo,
Yes.
Regent Bogus,
Yes.
Regent Cologne, Regent Goida,
Yes.
Regent Cruiser,
Yes.
Regent Manny Dietz,
Yes.
Regent Nixon,
Yes.
Regent Peterson,
Yes.
Regent Prince,
Yes.
Regent Rye,
Yes.
Regent Salzwedel,
Yes.
Regent Trainer,
Yes.
Regent Tyler,
Yes.
Regent Underly,
Yes.
Regent Walsh,
Yes.
and Regent Weatherly.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll pause now to make sure the room is cleared for closed session.